Your lease renewal arrives. There is a number on it. It is higher than last year, not dramatically. Enough. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you picture a person deciding it. A manager at a desk, looking at your building, thinking about what the market will bear. On a large, professionally managed building, that picture is usually wrong, not because nobody looked at the number, because of the order things happened in. The number was recommended first. A person approved it second. And the thing that recommended it could see something you cannot see, and something your neighbor cannot see either. It could see what people in the building across the road are actually paying, not the price on the listing, what they pay. That difference is the whole episode. This is Policy Unpacked, where we read the documents that decide things in the language of the people they decide things about. Last file, we followed a house through 4 owners and found the entity on the deed. And then we admitted what we had not found. We found who held the paper. We did not find who set the number on it. This is that number. Scope. This is the United States. It is about large, professionally managed apartment buildings, not about the person who rents out the flat above their garage. And one disclosure that shapes every sentence after it. There was a federal antitrust case about this. It ended in a settlement. A settlement is not a verdict. Nobody was found liable because the case never reached that question. So when I say the complaint alleged something, I mean exactly that and nothing further. The category has a name that tells you nothing. Revenue management software. Airlines have used the idea for decades. So have hotels. The premise is simple and it is not sinister. You have a fixed number of units, they expire on a schedule, and an empty one earns nothing forever. An empty seat on a departed flight cannot be sold later. An empty apartment in a month that has ended cannot be rented later either. So the software's job is to answer one question continuously. What price fills your unit fast enough without leaving money on the table? And notice that your apartment is being treated the way an airline treats a seat. Perishable, priced against the clock, not against you. Here is how it runs on an apartment building. The management company feeds in its own operating data, not just rents, vacancy, which leases expire in which week, how long units are sitting empty. The software returns a recommended price per unit, updated constantly, not once a year. And then a leasing agent either accepts that recommendation or does not, which sounds like a person is still in charge. A machine suggests, a human decides. That is how we describe most software, and it is comforting. Keep it in mind anyway, because the government's case was not really about the price the software produced. It was about what happened to the human who tried to change it. Hold on to that last step. Whether a human can say no and what happens when they do turns out to be the part the government cared about most. Now, the input that matters. There are 2 prices attached to every apartment, and almost nobody outside the industry separates them. There is the asking price, the number on the listing. You can see that one. So can I. So can any competitor. So can anyone with a phone. And there is the effective price, what the tenant actually ends up paying after 2 months free, after the waived fee, after the concession that was negotiated on a Tuesday because the unit had been empty for 6 weeks. The asking price is public. The effective price is not. And that is the asymmetry. A landlord looking at the market with human eyes sees the listings. Software fed by many landlords at once can see what those listings actually settled at. One of those is a market. The other is a mirror. The scale is not small. The company at the center of this case says its software prices more than 4 million apartments. That is roughly 8% of American rental units. And separately, it says it has access to transactional data from the rent rolls of more than 13 million. Notice the gap between those 2 numbers. It prices 4 million, it sees 13 million. And there is a version of that gap that reaches you personally. If you have ever rented an apartment from a large management company, your lease may already be somewhere in the 13 million, not as a name, as a row. which means the number on your renewal letter and the information used to justify it may partly be the same thing, arriving 18 months apart. Here is the thing that makes this hard to talk about, and the reason most coverage either overstates it or misses it. Price fixing, in the ordinary sense, requires an agreement. Two competitors talk. They decide not to go below a number. That is illegal. It has been illegal for over a century, and everyone involved knows it is illegal. Nothing in this story requires that conversation to have happened. Picture 3. Apartment buildings on the same road, owned by 3 companies that genuinely compete and whose executives have never met. All 3 subscribe to the same pricing service. All 3 feed it their real numbers, including the effective rents nobody publishes. The service reads all of it and recommends a price to each of them. And the recommendations move together, not because anyone coordinated, because they are 3 outputs of one model, reading one pool of data. Which raises a question that sounds academic and is worth about 4% of your rent. If nobody agreed to anything, is anything wrong? That is roughly the question the Department of Justice took to court. And notice what has quietly disappeared from the road with the 3 buildings. The thing that normally protects you as a renter is not anyone's good intentions, it is uncertainty. A landlord who does not know what the building opposite is really getting has to guess. Guessing means sometimes pricing too low. And pricing too low is how you get a deal, how your friend got 2 months free, how anyone has ever talked a rent down. Take away the uncertainty, and you take away the guess. And the guess was working for you, quietly, for years. Nobody has to conspire for that to change your renewal letter. The information does the work. And this is why the phrase, people reach for, price fixing, fits badly here. Price fixing describes a meeting. What we are describing is closer to the opposite of a meeting. 3 companies, each acting in its own interest, each reading the same reflection of the market, each arriving at a similar answer independently. There is a term for prices that converge without an agreement. Economists call it tacit coordination, and it has always been legally awkward because there is nothing to point at. What is new is not the idea. What is new is that a shared piece of software can now supply the shared information at a speed no group of executives could manage in a room. The government's case did not stop at the data. It went at that last step, the human saying yes or no. Everything in the next 90 seconds is an allegation from a complaint. It was never tested at trial. I will say so as I go, and I am not going to stop saying it. The complaint alleged that the software tracked how often each client accepted its recommendations, and that it tracked which individual staff member had asked to deviate. The complaint alleged that the vendor employed pricing advisors who reviewed requests to override a recommended price and that a rejection could trigger a call. It alleged that training material warned regional managers about a particular kind of employee. The phrase is quoted from the filing. Rogue leasing agents who override recommendations too often. It alleged that the system was built so that accepting was easier than declining. An auto-accept feature on one side. On the other, a box where you had to type your reason for saying no. And it alleged that at some companies, staff compensation was tied to how closely they followed the recommendations. Step back from the legal question for a second and look at what that describes. A recommendation you must justify refusing from a system that logs your name when you refuse is not really a recommendation. That was the theory of the case, not that a price was ordered, that saying no was made expensive. The scale of who was sued matters. In January 2025, the Department of Justice sued 6 large landlords over the same alleged scheme. Together, they manage more than 1.3 million apartments across 43 states and the District of Columbia. And there is one number in this story I have to hand you twice, because there are 2 honest counts and they disagree. The company says fewer than 10% of American rental units use its software to suggest prices, and that its recommendations are accepted less than half the time. That is their public position, in their words. A White House analysis put the reach far higher, as many as 1 rental in 4 affected. Both can be defended because they count different things. One counts units running the software, the other counts units in markets where enough competitors run it that the price moves anyway. We did this in episode 1 with 2 different Atlanta figures, and the answer is the same. When the counts disagree, the disagreement is the finding. Do not let anyone hand you only one of them. So that was the case the government brought. Now here is the part almost nobody reports correctly, and it is the part that determines what happens to your rent from here. Because this story does not end with a courtroom deciding whether any of that was true. It ends somewhere much stranger. So the case ended. In November 2025, the company and the Department of Justice reached a settlement. A federal court in North Carolina approved it in May 2026. And if you assume that means the software was banned, you will misread everything that happens in rental pricing for the next 7 years. It was not banned. Here is what the settlement actually says. The software may no longer take non-public, competitively sensitive information from one customer and use it live to generate a price recommendation for a competing customer. But it may still use non-public information to train its model, provided that information is at least 12 months old and with price data and geographically local data carved out. Read those 2 sentences next to each other and you find the actual holding of this entire saga. The line was not drawn between algorithms and humans. It was drawn between information that is fresh and information that is a year stale. Your rent can still be recommended by software trained on what your neighbors paid. It just has to be what they paid last year. The auto accept feature survives too. Inside limits the customer sets themselves. The rest of the terms are real and worth knowing. An outside monitor for 3 years after final approval. The settlement itself running 7 years, with the department able to end it after 4 if it decides it is no longer needed. And the company agreeing to cooperate with the government in the ongoing case against the landlords. And the sentence that has to be said plainly: the company did not admit liability. It agreed to do some things and stop doing others. No court ever ruled that it broke the law. Separately, and this is a different set of cases, 37 settlements in private class action litigation have been reached with a combined value of about $360 million. Those are also settlements, not findings. A final approval hearing is scheduled for October 2026, which, as I record this, has not happened. Now, the part where I have to argue against my own episode, because the strongest counter-argument here might be right. When the 6 landlords were sued, the company's senior vice president said this publicly, quote, "It is past time to stop scapegoating RealPage and now our customers for housing affordability problems when the root cause of high housing costs is the undersupply of housing." End quote. That is not a weak defense. It is close to the consensus position in housing economics. The United States has underbuilt housing for years. Where supply is short, rents rise, and they rise whether or not anybody runs pricing software. Software does not pour concrete. It cannot create an apartment. There is an estimate you may have seen that algorithmic pricing adds around $70 a month, roughly 4%. That number comes from parties to the litigation, not from a court, and I am labeling it an estimate for that reason. 4% is worth having. It is also not the difference between affordable and unaffordable in a city that has not built anything in a decade. So hold both. A pricing mechanism can raise your rent at the margin, and a housing shortage can be the larger cause at the same time. Those do not cancel out. What this episode is about is the margin, because the margin is the part that was hidden and the part that has now been regulated. 15 minutes, and it is not legal advice. It is finding out which side of the information gap you are standing on. 1. When your renewal number arrives, ask the office one plain question. Is this rent generated by a revenue management system? You are allowed to ask, and the answer tells you what kind of negotiation you are in. 2. Find out how many days similar units in your building have been sitting empty. Listing sites show how long a unit has been posted. Vacancy is the one input that pushes a recommendation down. 3. Ask about concessions rather than about rent. A month free is an effective rent conversation, and effective rent is where the flexibility usually lives. Asking price is the number the system defends. Effective price is the number it manages. 4. Check whether your city or state has passed anything on algorithmic rent pricing. Several have moved since 2024, and this is genuinely local. Your council may have already acted. And one thing not to do, do not assume the software means the number is fixed. Vacancy still moves it. A unit that has been empty for 6 weeks is a different conversation from one with 3 applicants. So, who actually sets your rent? A model recommended it, using information about what real people really pay, including people who never agreed to have their own lease turned into a data point about somebody else's rent. A person approved it in a system where approving was easier than refusing if the complaints account is right. And a settlement that admitted nothing has now made that lawful going forward on one condition. The information has to be a year old. That is not nothing. Stale data is a worse mirror than live data, and a worse mirror gives you back some of the uncertainty that used to protect you. But it is a much narrower rule than algorithms cannot price your home. And you will hear people say the second thing. Here is what I cannot tell you, and this channel says the parts it cannot prove. I cannot tell you how much of your specific rent increase came from this. Nobody can, at the level of your building. The estimates that exist are contested, they were produced by people with the side, and no court has ruled on them. What is documented is the mechanism, the scale, and where the line was eventually drawn. You now know all 3, which is more than the letter on your table will ever tell you. Next file. We have found who owns the building and who prices it. We have not asked why the building exists at all. Because a lot of new apartments are not built by people who intend to keep them. There is a sign outside that says, "Now leasing," and there are 3 separate companies standing behind it. This is Policy Unpacked. Subscribe, and we will read the next one.